It's 4 o'clock in Radio Cairo. This is World of Info. Yes, it's a Thursday afternoon. My name is Dr. Amrou Mabrouk. Muhammad is at the control and we're coming live from Studio 3. And our direct line number is 257-89407. And yes, we are having a very special guest today, His Excellency Mr. Paul Garnier, the Ambassador of Switzerland in Cairo. And really, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Mabrouk. This is a pleasure likewise, and I'm happy to be for the second time in this place.
Yes, and thank you very much for honoring us with this visit. Switzerland is a country that is dear to us all, and it's very dear. I have a very special part of in my heart is with Switzerland, because there where I had a short scholarship over there back in 89 and also in 98 in Basel and in Zurich, where I had very fine training in maxillofacial surgery. It's something that is one of the specialties in surgery that the Swiss people are mastering it and are pioneers in this field, besides a lot of things. So we are going on air today to talk about Switzerland, and we are going to talk in depth about the secret of success of the Swiss people and of Switzerland. Stay tuned with us, and it's really great honor. Well, Mr. Paul Garnier, the ambassador of Switzerland in Cairo, has a very colorful career. He was the representative of Switzerland in Ramallah, in Palestine, and was working in Brussels in the NATO, in the mission of Geneva, the Swiss mission to the NATO, in Geneva, working in the United Nations mission, the Swiss mission in the United Nations, in Guatemala, in Bern, and before joining the Foreign Service, he worked in the ICRC with a degree in International Relations from Geneva. Such a very prestigious career and such professionalism that will entitle us to ask a lot of questions in depth about Switzerland and about the country that a lot of people are thinking of it as a model. And they see a country that has been, as we can say, called landlocked country, doesn't have seashore, doesn't have access to commerce as people would think, but yet it was a cross line between borders between the East and the West, and a country that through maintenance of its neutrality stayed for years and centuries as a peaceful haven amid the great destruction of wars, consecutive wars that happened from the 19th century onwards and the 20th century, and Swiss was able to escape from that. And people say always that this might be due to the democracy that rules the country, the democracy that binds the Swiss together, although they come from multiple races, from different languages, from ethnic groups that people would say they are different, but there is one bond that brings them together, that is the nation and the democracy. The direct democracy remains one of the pillars of maintaining the confederation. So, sir, could you please elaborate on that? With the referendum as a general tool for example, the last weekend there was a referendum about the responsibility of companies to protect human beings and environment, and the ban on financing producers of war. So every Swiss human being knows that he can make a difference and make a change in the confederation and increase the unity between the people, right?
Yes, well, you're right. To seek a consensus in Switzerland is a very important matter because of the different cultures that are actually constituting Switzerland. And you're right, when it comes to the different wars of the 20th centuries and even before, the idea was always to find a system where you can keep this consensus. And for that, and also because of the different religions that we have in Switzerland, which are, more or less equal in terms of the numbers, the Protestantism and Catholicism in Switzerland. So here as well, you needed a balancing act. So basically, the system in Switzerland has used this direct democracy instruments to make sure that the people would have their say and the cohesion would be maintained. And so this instrument, the instrument of the referendum, or even another, the referendum is basically an instrument where the people can confirm or go against a law that is decided by the parliament. That's basically the referendum. And then the initiative would be something where the people, 100,000 people signing an initiative can decide to bring a proposal to change the constitution. And so last weekend, yes, it was an interesting topic. One was the topic of how to make sure that the companies are acting in a responsible way when it comes to environment and social issues. And very interesting result of this vote in Switzerland. You had a majority of the people who voted in favor of asking the companies to actually do more to ensure that those rights are respected when they work abroad, mainly. But you didn't have the majority of the constituting states of Switzerland. It's a little like in the US right now. You yes. you have the majority of the votes, but you don't necessarily. Well, this time it was the case that you also have the majority of the states. But in this case, it was not because many cantons, especially in central Switzerland, voted against this initiative. But maybe to come back to the main topic, why does the direct democracy help the consensus? Well, it makes it possible to have a government of national consensus, because this government has to find solutions in order to be sure that it will be confirmed by the people if there is a referendum. If you wouldn't have the vote by the people, then you would not need this consensus to take place already, or this search for a solution to take place within the government. So the government is actually constituted from the four main parties of the country, and the pressure of the popular rights makes it unavoidable to have the main parties in the government. Otherwise it wouldn't work. Otherwise the people would always go to a referendum and vote against what the government has decided.
Yes, this is very interesting. To bring discipline. So another point in the referendum was interesting, which is financing producers of war material. This means the companies or the industries that are manufacturing war material in Switzerland, they wanted to make sort of control on them, or what?
No, that means there was a part of the population asking for more control, and actually asking that the government entities like the National Bank or the pension funds, or even the pension fund, the main pension fund, even private ones, that they could not finance industries that are producing weapons that are exported. So that was a proposal. It was rejected by the majority of the people and by the canton, but it still got 40% of the vote, which again shows that the population is concerned about ethical standards, is concerned about making sure that what the Swiss companies do in the world is correct and according to the standards. And you can notice that very much also when it comes to the environmental issues, where actually the push comes a lot more from the people than from the politicians. The people are concerned about the climate change, and they always come with proposals, and some of them are accepted to make sure that the environment is preserved. You have to see also Switzerland like maybe like Cairo and the Delta area, it's a very dense area. Actually, Switzerland, when you don't go to the mountains, the rest of Switzerland is a very dense area,
heavily populated,
heavily populated, densely populated, and so you definitely have a lot of people who are worried that if we don't manage well our environment, it will not be possible to have a sustainable life anymore.
I find one of the interesting referendum when I was there in 1989. There was a referendum in November or December, I don't know whether you remember that or not, which is about to remove the army or to cancel the presence of the military, like Costa Rica. And I found that this failed in the referendum. Everybody, almost 90% of the population, refused to abolish the Swiss army, saying that when all the countries will abolish their armies, then we will abolish the Swiss army. So we'll keep the army. So it's very important how people are seeing the entity of neutralism beside the entity of keeping the country safe. So, for example, there was a referendum also in 2020, which I noticed, which was about the purchase of very modern aeroplanes, fighters, modern fighters, to replace the old ones, or the old F-16s. And I found out that the whole referendum won the support of almost the people. Of 60% of the population wanted to purchase such expensive state-of-art aircrafts to maintain the integrity and the strength of the Swiss army. I find that very interesting, don't you?
Yeah, well, it's what we call the armed neutrality. Well, there is and the same group, let's say, of people who are worried about too much militarization was actually the one proposing the referendum we just talked about the
abolition of the army,
the abolition of about the control of I mean, not being able to invest in companies producing armament. Well, the vote on the abolition of the army, which took place almost at the end of the Cold War, actually got a little more support than I mean, it was yes, it was reasonable, something like that, 30%. At that moment, then there was a vote again for the fighters, for the plane, for the army planes, and
they want F-35.
But first, it was actually rejected some years ago, and now, just a few months ago, with a very thin majority, it was accepted. But what does it mean in the end? It means that yes, Switzerland is aware that you also have to preserve security, and of course, if you are a country which is very jealous of its independence, it also needs to defend its independence and to be able to defend itself, clearly also maybe in cooperation with others, but to defend itself when there would be a problem. No? So that's part of it, and that's the reason why. Normally the votes are quite reasonable, and that's a very interesting aspect of such a system like the direct democracy, is that don't expect the vote to be crazy. No, the people, when they vote, they actually are quite reasonable. The people are very wary, very afraid, for example, of any damage that would come to the economy. And so you had votes like on trying to reduce the number of hours that the people are working. That was rejected, or to trying to lower, on the contrary, to have a higher minimal salary. That was rejected as well, or to work, and so all these topics that would create a big damage to the economy are actually rejected. So, or to sometimes also to lower taxes. Actually, people voted against lowering taxes because they think that would actually have a
Affect
detrimental
the
effect
services.
on the services that are provided by the government. So it's interesting that actually it's not creating. I mean, it's not populistic topics don't get normally a majority in Switzerland. There are some exceptions.
I think this could be towards the education. Last time we brought the subject of education to our floor here of this talk was about the fact that the education in Switzerland, yes, everybody could have the chance if he fulfills his degrees in the high school to have free education in the university, but if and only if he has high scores in the high school. Yet in high school, definitely the education system makes an important impact on the civic role of the citizens, right? Because this sort of understanding that you have just brought about, how the system is working, how you cannot lower the taxes, otherwise the services would get disturbed. The free service, or the free health service, or the free transport, or the support of the transport that's given by the government will be affected. How that became a sort of a fixed belief in the psyche of the Swiss population. Is it through education or what?
I think that the most important thing is that you know that you have the proximity of the power. I mean, everything that can be done at local level is done at local level in Switzerland, and then it's only if it needs to be done at cantonal, which is state level, and federal level, and between nations level, that you would bring it to that level. But that means that the people know they have some influence on what is going on at the local level, and probably that is the very important thing, that people can feel responsibility, responsibilize themselves, and that's happening, of course, at school at the same time, because you are asked to normally to be in charge of yourself. I mean, small things, of course. You would have the kids. They go alone to school in the town itself by walking to the place. They would have systems that make them quite responsible about their the achievement that they have to make to school. But it's always this idea that you are very close to the deciding power that makes people feel responsible, and they don't say, well, it depends from the state, and the state is so far away that we cannot change anything. So I guess that kind of responsibility that people feel is certainly an aspect of what then reflects in the vote and in the popular vote, where people still feel responsible about the final decision.
Yes. So I think after going through education and democracy and the way how the Swiss are on the plain level, on the citizen level, are controlling the nation as a whole, will bring us to a short break, because we have to discuss the other secrets of success in different businesses. So we are still listening to World of Info with His Excellency Mr. Paul Garnier, the Ambassador of Switzerland in Cairo, talking in depth about the success of Switzerland. So still on air on Radio Cairo with His Excellency Mr. Paul Garnier, the Ambassador of Switzerland to Cairo and Egypt, and definitely when we were off air, we were discussing one of the important secrets of success, which is the tough environment that the Swiss people are living in. If we remove the effect of civilization, that is the air conditioning and the heating system and the electricity, we'll find that very tough environmental conditions in the mountains of the Switzerland, and this needed a lot of solidarity between the people, for the people to stay together in order to survive. This perhaps is one of the secrets of success, right, sir?
Well, yes, and probably it has also encouraged a lot the innovation factor, because you need to improve your environment every day. maybe it's more pleasant to be on the side of the Nile with a good, very good climate. But in Switzerland, you really also have to improve your environment to be able to live in decent conditions. And so it's the very interesting thing that the famous saying of Orson Welles saying. Well, the Italians have invented so many things, but the Swiss only invented the cuckoo clock. But it's very interesting because in fact we didn't invent the cuckoo clock. It was probably Germany, South Germany. But the Swiss always invented, but maybe smaller inventions, not the big ones.
First of all, he was always sarcastic, even for himself. I mean, when you read his books, when you watch him acting, he's a real sarcastic guy.
Very sarcastic. So always maybe smaller inventions, but that actually allowed the economic growth and the prosperity. We have, of course, we will be able to talk about several examples in the economic sector. But I mean, for example, what happened? Why do you have chocolate in Switzerland?
Why we don't plant
cocoa.
And at the same time, you are not colonial. I mean, you're not imperial, so you're not occupying Coast of Ivory, for example, for cocoa.
So here it's just because of the ideas about transformation of this product using milk and making chocolate with milk. That was and this match allowed Nestlé to start well. The same thing happened with coffee. To make powder, Nescafé in the end to make powder with coffee that can be used with water. The same thing happened with the milk that you could also put in powder so that it could be used. And so all these transformations made a huge industry in Switzerland. Nestlé is well known, Caillé is well known, and others. Suchard is well known. But there were all these innovations, added value innovation that created the wealth and the success of Swiss companies. It was very interesting also when the invention of the Nespresso capsule, which was something it took about 20 years until really the business model of Nespresso worked. But it was, of course, an incredible invention just to have this possibility of having a machine and a very clean capsule that you can use and without having too much to do with your coffee machine. So, but these kind of inventions was very important for the industry at that time to go against competition, and the same happened, for example, with watches, and that's a very interesting topic also. You have the tradition of having a very high quality watches in Switzerland, but at some point of time, in the second half of the 20th century, the Swiss watch industry was challenged because people wanted cheaper watches.
Yes.
And then suddenly an engineer called Mr. Hayek came with this idea of trendy, cheap, but still high quality watches, which was called Swatch.
Yes.
And this allowed the industry to survive and to have a breathing They're
time. Still working, Swatch?
And Swatch is still here. And then now the next challenge, and this is something we have to follow. The next challenge is the smart watches, because here maybe the Swiss industry has waited a little because the high quality and high value watches is still a sector that is working very well. But still, I think there might be a need of adaptation, and it's happening right now to see how the Swiss industry will also be able to come with solutions when it comes to smartwatches.
So when we're talking about, since we were going to discuss every famous industry of Switzerland one by one, because there is a great secret of success, and you have just put us the magic word, which is big shots are little shots who keep on shooting. They are the ones who, small modification that they made, it didn't need a lot of intelligence to do, it didn't need a lot except the persistence or the perseverance of the person on the helm of this company to try to find a solution for a small problem and build on it. So since we brought the subject of watches, Swiss watches are known for perfection, and they are always in their advertisements, they go on for making a very important statement, which is that we are very accurate. We never have a delay. It is always handmade. So making this mark or markmanship has been always very trendy for the Swiss companies in watches. I mean, is this really the secret of success, or what? I mean, because to have handmade watches is quite expensive, and it needs a lot of technicalities. And these people really, I mean, these technical workers, I've seen them, for example, in Patek Philippe and these industries. I found that this is life-consuming. I mean, any person who works in this business will end up losing a lot of his vertebrae and a lot of his eyesight and things like that. So how they were able to manage this success story in comparison to the Japanese industry that was attacking the market in the 60s and the 70s with their watches, for example. And of course the replicas that are going around the world carrying false names of the Swiss marks. This is a very severe competition.
Yes, I think there is one point that we haven't mentioned yet, which is the framework in which you operate. Switzerland has relatively high labor costs, and that was even throughout the history. But of course, when and is a very open economy, and it was an open economy maybe before others became an open economy. I mean, basically, what happened for the watches, it was the Huguenots were chased from Switzerland from France by Louis the 14th,
yes,
and so they came to Switzerland and they started to develop business, and then they used labor, cheap, relatively cheap labor, even though in the countryside, in the mountains, who during the whole winter didn't have much to do when it comes to agriculture, and so these people, the ladies, including the ladies, could work on watches during that time. So it was a very decentralized way, of course, of doing that, and the framework was that you always had. And this is a relatively small country, and as I said, because of the hardship of the country, the infrastructure was always very important, and the roads were built, bridges were built, the train was built and was very important, and the legal framework was always very good as well. So when companies can count on when people bringing innovation, or when entrepreneur can count on a framework which is relatively safe, which is relatively stable, where also that there is no political persecution as it was happening in some other countries in Europe at that time, then you find this framework, and you can develop products in that framework. So I think once again it's very important, and we can, if we look at the actual situation. Why is Switzerland now very strong in all what is cryptocurrencies, for example? It's the same thing. It's companies come from all over the world because they know first that they will have good infrastructure, good conditions, good internet, good informatic, IT, and everything. Well-educated people, and at the same time, they know there will be a framework in which they operate. So there is something predictable, very predictable about how they operate. And they know it will not change from one day to another. So that gives a long-term perspective. So all of these conditions create actually a very attractive environment for companies. even though, as I was saying, the labor costs are high, and of course, in general, also the living costs are relatively high.
Yes, and the workers knew that they are going to be supported by their companies. If these workers are sticking to the rules, they will have their own insurance that will compensate for their eyesight or compensate for their pain in the neck when they are doing this work. And another part of the company is doing the marketing, doing their job to secure that this product is always finding people to buy, right? More or less. So it's more like it's what we call the safety net of all these companies.
Sure. And in the 1930s, when there was a big crisis happening in Europe, as we know, and in the US, of course, and all over the world, that's when really the social schemes started in negotiation, actually, between the companies, the state, and the labor force, and that became what he called in Switzerland the work peace, la paix du travail, the work peace, where actually solutions were found so that there would be enough money to create solidarity with the laborers in case of big problems. And this peace with the working class has been one major element, of course, of the economic growth, because people feel secure enough in that system. We are not. It's not a system that is extremely generous, let's say, compared to some other countries. The social protection. If you take issues like maternity leave or other things, it's a lot less than you would get in other countries. But you are sure that the health insurance costs a lot of money in Switzerland, but it's compulsory, and so but still you know that you will not be left in the street like this. Yeah.
So this will bring us to a sister industry, which is also sophisticated, and Switzerland was not the country that produced that as a start, but definitely it has its effect and has its important headquarters, that is pharmaceutical industries. Because as far as I'm concerned, the pharmaceutical industry and the R&D in it is the one that is responsible for generating millions and billions of dollars or Swiss francs for the companies, for these huge companies, and mostly they are situated in Basel. So when we talk about pharmaceutical industries, you are not the first in pharmaceutical industries, but now you are one of the strongest countries with a very heavy investment of entrepreneurs from all over the world in your pharmaceutical industry. How was that possible? Is it the secret of success? Was it the worker or the entrepreneurship or the investment in R&D, research and development, or what?
So, Doctor, that's a topic that you know quite well, I'm sure, and we will see if you come along what I'm going to say. There are two aspects that were interesting, maybe that will surprise you a little. One aspect being that at the end of the 19th century, Switzerland was not applying very strict patent laws. Now it is, of course, Switzerland, because it's very important for our industry, and we always insist for intellectual property rights everywhere in the world. But at that time, the patent laws were relatively weak in Switzerland, and so people who were, looking for innovation actually liked to be able to move around freely and to test and experience among each other, and so it was some kind of laboratory for people. Huh? And the second thing is that, as you know, at that time the German world was really a pioneer in that sector, and so. And Switzerland benefited from that, of course, being a country of the German world. There is a French part, an Italian part, but the main part is a German-speaking part, and so they benefited also from this situation. And then I think it came to skilled labor in Switzerland, which was already developing quite quite well, and more and more. Once again, about the quality of the infrastructure, the quality of the transportation and everything. The fact that you would have companies that really encourage innovation, and so it developed very, very fast, and because of the quality, as we were saying, the fact that you put up a system where you know that the quality will be there. Of course, that in medicine it's a very important one, because you want good products. So it actually allowed Switzerland to develop, and especially the Basel area at that time, to develop relatively fast in this sector. And it continued. This situation continued. It was also an environment where then the intellectual property and the price system was fair to the companies, so that the companies felt comfortable in staying in Switzerland and developing their products from Switzerland. And maybe one point now that I want to say about the pharmaceutical industry, it's the main part of our export. Sorry, and like with Egypt, we are seeing that our trade balance is in favor of Switzerland, and we are doing also efforts in order to counterbalance that. But if we would take away the chemicals, pharmaceutical industry from our export, then we would have a normal trade balance. I mean, it's really what makes the difference. What makes the difference is the pharmaceuticals, because the demand for Swiss pharmaceuticals in Egypt and everywhere in the world is huge.
Yes, of course. This is what I wanted to bring the subject. And of course, we'll go to the second important business, which of course has seen in the past years a lot of reforms and a lot of transparency that helped this industry to survive. And I mean by that the banking industry, because the Swiss banks were thought in the beginning as they are peaceful haven for money from all over the world. But this reputation, or this ill reputation, has been replaced by great reforms in the past 30 or 40 years or even 50 years, where the money has been completely transparent, and this business, the trust and the confidence of the people that this banking system will never fail, and will never fail the confidence of the people. It will not be a haven for legitimate money, has really given more trust and more confidence in the banking industry. How was that possible? I mean, how this banks stay strong and stable all through these years, almost 100 years?
Yeah, here you needed some financial products, of course, to develop also the economy. That's very clearly, and you had to be innovative as well, because as an anecdote, I can tell you that in the Geneva, in the very Calvinist Geneva, for example, you were not allowed to ask for interest rates. So it's a bit like with the Quran, you have to find ways of doing things. And for example, you were selling products in advance at a lower price, which would represent the difference, would actually represent the interest rate, but you wouldn't say like this. So you had to be also innovative because of cultural reasons. But another surprise would be why did Switzerland have what we call the banking secrecy? It was mainly to protect people coming from outside or being persecuted, like Jews who were coming in Switzerland. So in order that they could not be tracked, basically,
especially in World War II,
especially
30s, right?
if in World War II and the persecution time. So this aspect has to be taken into account. So how was the banking sector? I mean, the banking sector developed very well indeed. Again, because of the political stability of the good protection of data and so on. But why did the transformation succeed in a system where actually now there is exchange of information between the countries, and that was something that was decided within the OCDE, where the banking secrecy is not anymore applied. And of course, a lot of people were fearing that Switzerland would lose its market because of that. But what happened is that, again, the quality of the services, the continuity and the professionalism of the different banking institutions made it possible actually to keep the markets, to keep the share of the market as it was before. And I think now we have a very performing banking system that is going more and more into digitalization as well, that is using a lot more fintech, new technologies for financing. And a very important factor, and this is maybe important to say that in Egypt, is that the loans loans for bit risky loans from the banks are very well developed in Switzerland, and so you give loans to companies that want to develop something. You give loans to people who want to take risk in the economic sector. And so that's, of course, a huge supplier of business for the banks, and so it's this capital risk and the fact that the Swiss banks are really investing and giving loans for the development of the economy is really supporting the sector very much. And I think in Egypt we also try to, as much as possible, to help all the efforts in order to have more loans that are given to companies and to small companies so that they can develop their business.
Mm-hmm. So you have just mentioned the word digitalization, which is, I think, the key word for progress nowadays. There is a great effort that Switzerland is doing in the field of digitalization to improve the service all over. Would you elaborate on that, please?
Well, of course, digitalization is a field where the companies have an interest, direct interest, especially in a country where the labor costs are very high, in order to avoid to pay too many salaries, let's say. At the same time, to make services more efficient. But what has maybe now happened in the last years is the willingness of the government to invest massively in the digitalization and to make it a main objective of our policy at a national level, including in our foreign policy. So that's really there is really a big push, including from the government. But once again, the digitalization is finding a good place in Switzerland when it comes to in university research institution which are developing. You also have a big social media companies or IT companies that are based in Switzerland. Yeah.
Mm. So I think we have, since we brought the subject of digitalization, we have to talk about the COVID challenge, because without digitalization, a lot of markets and a lot of businesses would have been out of reach if the internet was working properly, if people would have never been able to work from home, as a lot of industries and a lot of business are working from home. So the COVID challenge in Switzerland, we have seen the Swiss company and the Swiss people are on the alert, as the whole world is on the alert from the COVID, something that we haven't seen since 1917, 1918 with the Spanish flu, when people are starting to fall victims of an unknown virus that is resisting all measures for its combating, and people went on for the lockdown. What was the Swiss experience towards this great challenge?
Well, Switzerland suffered from the COVID and is suffering from the COVID tremendously, like many other countries, even more than some countries, I have to say. And this comes also back to the density, the densely populated areas, and the fact that it is at the crossroads and that Switzerland cannot close its borders, because if it closes its borders, a lot of the business is not happening, and you also have a lot of workers coming from other countries every day, actually, even working in hospitals. So Switzerland is really a very interconnected country. So that's the COVID is presenting a lot of challenges for our country. Fortunately, when it comes to the digitalization, Switzerland was quite prepared for home office, and almost the whole government at some point of time went into home office, and it worked quite well. It even worked very well from our embassy here, where we could see that we could put quite a lot of people in home office, and that we would be effective even in home office, and that we had the necessary IT that would allow that. So that's certainly something that where we were somehow prepared for it, and it helped a lot. But you have other sectors like in Egypt who are suffering a lot, like tourism. Like hotels, restaurants are suffering.
How people are faring? Are these business out of service, or the government tried to support them?
Well, Switzerland was not as drastic, let's say, as some neighboring countries. In some, but and in Switzerland you would have measures now that are taken by the different states or cantons according to the prevalence of the virus. But yes, some cantons had to close restaurants, had to close all public institutions for some time. So we are dealing with it in a more à la carte way in Switzerland in different areas. But at the beginning, when it happened, I mean in March, when the prevalence was really high, and it was still not. We didn't know exactly what was happening. The measures were even stricter for some time.
But nowadays, the tourist industry, I mean, for example, I know that the visa section is still closed like any Schengen country. So you are deriving yourself from tourists, for example, from the Middle East. And of course, people are afraid to travel. But some people would say, I will take the risk. I would like to travel. I would like to have a fresh breeze in the mountains. And yet the tourist section is closed. The visa section is closed for the Schengen, for example. And they said that they are allowing the Europeans to go in, or European residents to go to Switzerland or to go to France or wherever. But still, the tourist industry as a whole is suffering. Was the allowance of the European citizens to go in was a little savior for the industry, or still the industry is suffering? I mean, we are approaching the Christmas time, where usually Switzerland is one of the best recreation areas in Christmas time from all over the world. From all over the world, you receive a lot of people who like to spend the seasons of the Christmas in Switzerland. Yeah.
Well, I don't think. I mean, there were big measures even between countries. You have to see that. So I was in the Swiss mountains in the summer. I think most of the tourism was actually coming from Switzerland, and the Swiss themselves that rediscovered the mountains.
Yes.
So that was very very nice. Actually, we could see a lot of Swiss people went to the mountains instead of going abroad or going.
Because they were forced. They were locked in, right?
They were forced. So that made it possible, at least during the month of August, for some. But that was in the mountains. In the cities, it was terrible, because again, the tourism coming from big European cities didn't come to Switzerland for many reasons, and so they have suffered a lot. Now for Christmas, of course, there is a challenge because some countries have decided to close completely around us, and we have not for the time being. But we are so, and we have to find a compromise so that you are not at the same time, creating some other effects that are not expected because some other countries are closing. But maybe just on visa, the main thing is we are just following the Schengen rules.
Yes, of course.
And we are part of the Schengen area, and so we have to cope with this.
Yeah. So before leaving, I mean, we have a lot of things to talk, but we are approaching our time. We have to talk about the Swiss-Egyptian relations, which have been always seeing a lot of success stories. I mean, there is mutual respect between both of our countries. There is sort of a model, Switzerland in industry and in technicalities and in organization has been always a model for Egyptians. Tell us about this Swiss-Egyptian cooperation and the future of this cooperation.
Yeah, well, it's a very intense cooperation between Switzerland and Egypt at all levels. Be it, of course, the trade we were talking about. There is a big trade. Egypt is our first export market in Africa, and we have a lot of activities. I mean, be it at cultural level, of course, be it at other levels. We have 40 years of cooperation, of a cooperation program that started with economic cooperation, and that has been extended. Now we have 3 pillars for our cooperation. One is in the field of governance and human rights. The other one is in the field of economic growth and creation of jobs, and the third one is in the field of supporting the efforts of Egypt when it comes to migratory streams, and especially when it comes to the burden that Egypt experiences in the field of migration, and also protecting the people that are migrants, and also helping them to find opportunities as they are very well accepted in Egypt. So these are the 3 main pillars of our cooperation. We will have a new cooperation strategy starting next year, and we are in the process of fine-tuning. If you would have to remember four words about what kind of results we want to have. I mean, one is a rule of law, one is jobs, one is migration, and one is climate change.
Yes, of course. I think your involved also as well with the greenery projects, because Switzerland has had always great emphasis, as you have just mentioned in the beginning of the program, how the Swiss people are very much oriented with the green economy and with the greening of the country to protect its environment. So I think your role and trials, of course, of cooperations and cooperation deals are happening also in this field, right?
Of course.
Tell us about the cooperation in the field of environment, if you may.
Yes, well, we had already a lot of several projects when it comes to the waste treatment, and this is, of course, the waste treatment in an environmentally friendly way. We do a project, very interesting one, in terms of electronic waste, and how this can be recycled, and how the producers also have to be involved in the process of recycling and even using it again when it comes to e-waste, for example. And now we are looking into several possibilities in the field of green economy, and developing and using using waste, using cleaner energy, trying to have less consumption of water and to reduce the consumption of water for the same result. So all these projects are, and this will be definitely one of the main topic that is going to be increased in our new cooperation strategy. And maybe the last point that I want to mention in that is that TVET, I mean the technical vocational education and training, is going to be also a more important element of our cooperation with Egypt. It's very important to train skilled, to train laborers, to have skilled laborers. Also Swiss companies that are employing more than 15,000 people here in Egypt, they also need skilled laborers. So that's something we really want to develop.
Well, it's very kind of you, sir, to bring all these subjects in our short time. But you have to promise us something. You have to promise us to come again, please. Because there are a lot of talk about Switzerland and the secret of success. We didn't discuss all the points that we wanted to discuss, but definitely it was a great pleasure and honor to have with us Mr. Paul Garnier, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Switzerland in Cairo. And really, we are looking forward for more meetings and more discussions and more in-depth information about Switzerland. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mabrouk. It's a pleasure, as always.
It's a great pleasure and honor. This was World of Info coming live from Studio 3 in Radio Cairo. My name is Dr. Amr Mabrouk. Dua Muhammad was at the controls, as always. And hopefully we'll see you the next time, same station, Radio Cairo.